Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Metro Flood Diversion Authority Board meeting Thursday, May 23rd, 2019. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
I am here.
Mr. Steen?
Here.
Dr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Here.
Mr. Grinberg?
Here.
Mr. Judd?
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson? Mr. Paulson? Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Wayland?
Here.
Mr. Thorsted?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Here.
Thank you. And you have in front of you the minutes to the previous meeting. Is there any additions or corrections or a motion?
Move for approval. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Any additions or changes to the order of the agenda? I would just add, go ahead, Commissioner Steen.
Something
I was going to add, under the management, the PMC report will be the Minnesota Legislative Report. Is there anything else? Then with,
John Shockley had, yeah.
thank you. That's 5B. Okay, sure. Yes, and we will also add an additional item to under 5B for the Buffalo Red Watershed District's request for additional time.
I'd move to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thank you. And item number 4, management. We'll get the PMC report. Welcome.
Thank you. All right. The PMC report. Program controls, the overall program status. On the program budget, based on 2018 dollars, $2.75 billion spent to date as of April 30th, 2019 is $471,806,197, leaving a remaining program budget of about $2.3 billion. On the fiscal year 2019 cash budget of $162,723,850, paid to date as of April 30th, $18,073,175, leaving a remaining budget of $144,650,675. Co-executive director approved contract actions that took place. This is for information only. Task Order 13, Amendment 20, levy design and design support to HMG. That's a net zero budget change. It was a reallocation of resources. Task Order 23, Amendment 2 for Work Package 43, the Oxbow Hickson-Baki ring levy, HMG budget estimate, an additional $148,367,000. And then change order 2 to Work Package 42E, 2nd Street South and Main Avenue Flood Control Pump Station Project to IBI. That was a deduct of $35,245. There's also Cass County Joint Water Resource District approved contract actions, many appraisal package amendments with the budget estimates listed there, and also a change order for ProSource Land Acquisition Services, again, net zero budget change. Mike, do you want to go into the? Sure, it's up to you. The legislative resource budget? Legislative report?
Yep, that's great. Madam Chair and members of the board, Andy Pomeroy is here. He's on the telephone joining us from St. Paul, and he's going to provide a brief update from St. Paul. That's okay.
Hello.
I think he's waiting for us to say
Welcome. Go ahead.
Sure. So I think folks received the report that I sent in earlier this week. The legislature has had a sort of interesting, not quite finished session. Just an update from that report to today and where we're at, the spending deal that the legislative leaders and the governor worked out has sort of the fine touches been put on that this week. I think all of the bills are now assembled and public with the exception of the Human Services Bill and the bonding bill. Human Services Bill, I think, is done, but it's not public, whereas the bonding bill is still the one that's furthest out. As I sort of alluded to in the report earlier in the week, the deal that legislative leaders agreed to was for a bonding bill of $440 million. That was a deal between the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate Majority Leader. Did not include minority caucus leadership, and those folks are required, or at least votes from the minority caucuses are required to get to 60% to pass a bonding bill. So the governor and other leaders have been working with the minority caucuses this week to try and get agreement on what a bonding bill might look like. So far, there's not agreement on doing one. I'm remaining hopeful that we can get there, but what we've heard, particularly from Minority Leader Doubt, is that he is not pleased about one of the tax extensions in the deal that was worked out, and he's not going to put up votes from his caucus for any component of a deal that includes that tax extension. So he so far sort of held firm that he won't support a bonding bill, which would mean there won't be one. But that's kind of the update from earlier the week to now. Oh, and so the other item is they originally planned to have the special session today. That's obviously not happening yet. Senate Minority Leader Bach met with the governor today and encouraged him to wait until after Memorial Day to call the special session to sort of wrap everything up. No official word on when that'll be. And folks are still hoping to get it in Friday, potentially into Saturday, but we don't know that for sure yet.
Okay, well, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Campbell?
Yes, thank you. I was reading, I guess my responses to what Andy had in his report about moving forward, things to do, and I think he gives some really good suggestions in moving forward, and Andy, I think we'll be working on some of your suggestions in the near future. I know you talk about there's the potential for a tour from some state committees, so we'll be doing what we can to make sure we can see that happen here in Clay and Cass County.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you so much, Mr. Palmer. I appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to respond to those tours, they do typically make a stop in Moorhead to do, city projects, county projects, the colleges, anything else that might be there. I'll be in touch with the committee staff, here once session does end about what their plans are, and making sure that a stop is included and that we get an opportunity to present on the diversion as we have the last couple of years. So.
Sounds good. Thank you much. Okay, go ahead and continue.
All right, thanks. Continuing with the PMC report, activities and accomplishments for the program implementation status. There was a meeting held recently which developed the approach to program implementation considering the current funding. Out of that meeting were some action items, which included re-engaging or discussion on re-engaging P3 proposer teams this summer with an anticipated contract award in 2020. Ring fencing P3 financing to secure proposer confidence, identifying potential program deferrals and optimizations, and preparing for requesting additional funds in 2021 North Dakota legislative session. There was also development, or the plan is to develop an implementation strategy for endorsement by the Diversion Authority leadership by the end of July. For land acquisition and property management status, Appraisals were contracted for 114 parcels. 3 parcels were acquired in the last month. There have been numerous purchase agreements being negotiated for channel parcels. The Corps is requested to secure bio-geo easements by early 2020. There was some delineation of cultural mitigation sites along the diversion channel. Flowage easement valuation next steps are being taken with Crown appraisals. And we are supporting formation of the Minnesota lands acquiring entity. And then property management plan for 2019, including weed management. We've provided assistance to the county on that. Okay, public outreach and social media, activities and achievements, develop the FM diversion position statements, and there's an analytics report on information regarding public media. Tammy Jo has backup if you'd like some specific information in regard to any of those analytics reported out there. And then there's a presentation by Terry Williams from the Corps.
Good afternoon. You should have a monthly update in front of you, hopefully. One-page little summary of what's been going on at the Corps' office recently. First, the diversion inlet structure under construction. We expect a revised construction schedule from Ames by 31 May. So we'll be able to report out with more detail as to what will be happening within or in the next year or so. But we expect that they'll be on site working about 15 June. The site has to be dewatered. If any of you driven by, it's pretty, we call it Lake Inlet right now. Test piles and then completion of the channel excavation will likely occur pretty quickly as soon as they get going. Number 2, the wild rice structure. Detailed design is complete and we're getting ready to put that out on the street for bids. The advance notice to bidders went out on April 29th. And the RFP, it's a request for proposal process. That'll be a 45-day opportunity for bidders to submit proposals, and then we're still on track to award a contract by the end of the fiscal year, or 30 September. Number 3, the Red River structure. We've started detailed design of that large structure, and currently we're preparing to contract for a physical model. Many of you probably remember that we did a physical model for the Maple River Aqueduct, and we're going to do one for the Red River control structure as well. And that model will help us verify the flows and design downstream scour protection type features. We're really scrubbing the design schedule. Our goal is still to be able to award a contract for the Red River structure in 21. Number 4, Southern Embankment. We are starting design of the Southern Embankment Plan B in earnest now. We have a team that's going full steam ahead, and we expect that we'll start doing borings in June. We're awarding a task order to get our boring crew out here, and they'll be out here quite a bit for the next year. Number 5, cultural resources mitigation. As Kim mentioned, we had some folks out delineating a couple cultural sites along the diversion channel, and we'll have a contractor out doing field work probably end of June into July to further investigate those sites and see if we have to do any more work there. We are working with the Native American tribes and the SHPO on this effort, and they will be highly involved. Number 6, on June 27th at your next meeting, both Colonel Calkins and our new district engineer coming in, Colonel Jansen, will be attending your meeting. And Colonel Jansen assumes command on the 10th of July. And on the back of this sheet is a bio for Colonel Jansen, if you're interested in reading that. With that, any questions?
Anyone have questions for Ms. Williams? Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And then to wrap up the PMC report, we have a short-term look ahead. The local sponsor, local consultant meeting is being held May 29th and 30th. There'll be a core check-in meeting on the work package 42E 2nd Street South Main Avenue Pump Station project on May 29th. As Terry mentioned, the visit by the Colonel on June 27th. A permit conditions review meeting with Minnesota DNR, the Buffalo Red River Watershed District, the Corps, and the Diversion Authority will take place. They anticipate setting up a meeting with the North Dakota State Water Commission on permit conditions and mitigation sometime in June, and initiating project owner outreach for environmental monitoring easements and rights of entry, that's BioGeo. And then initiating the ag impact study by the North Dakota State University. We anticipate developing reporting dashboards to report program schedule and budget progress. That's pending task order 5. And then re-engagement of P3 proposers in the diversion channel procurement. That's pending task order 6 approval. And then lastly, long-term look ahead, the next 3 to 6 months. We anticipate solidifying the structural mitigation requirements in coordination with permitting agencies, initiating outreach efforts related to the an anticipated approval of the CLOMAR, completing and implementing the financial strategy, and then issuing a draft P3 RFP for the diversion channel project pending task order 6, and achieving substantial completion of work package 42E, the 2nd Street South and Main Avenue Pump Station project. And that wraps it up for the PMC report.
Thank you. That's a lot going on. Any questions for Kim on this? Very good, thank you. Then item number 5, administrative legal, renewal and extension of the Wells Fargo loans.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Diversion Authority. Before you, you have a resolution approving to and consenting to the term sheets from Wells Fargo Bank for both Cass County and the City of Fargo. As way of background, you'll recall that the City of Fargo currently has a loan of $100 million through Wells Fargo for temporary funding for the project. Of that $100 million, $50,250,000 has been drawn down. The remaining approximate $49 million is available to be drawn for temporary financing. The Cass County also has a $100 million loan from Wells Fargo. That total amount has been drawn down. Those are for temporary financing of the project. The interest rate is based upon the LIBOR rate with a few additional points. This time around, we are simply renewing the Wells Fargo loans for an additional 2-year period. So that will get us additional time till we determine what our final financial package is. Both Cass County and Fargo have approved the term sheets. Following the approval of the term sheets, both entities will receive formal documents regarding the loans, as will the Diversion Authority. Pursuant to the Joint Powers Agreement, the Diversion Authority has to consent to its member entities issuing debt for the project. I can certainly answer any questions, but it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Shockley?
Move for approval.
Moved and seconded.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn? Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland? Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Item number 5B, Buffalo Red River Watershed District's request for additional permit review time. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Diversion Authority. Before you, you have a request from the Buffalo Red River Watershed District for additional time to review the Diversion Authority's permit application. By way of background, after the issuance of the Minnesota DNR permit in late December, one of the conditions of that permit from the DNR was that we obtain a permit from the Buffalo Red Watershed District. In late January, the Diversion Authority applied for a permit through Buffalo Red for project elements located within Buffalo Red Watershed District's jurisdiction. Our technical team, led by Bob Zimmerman, Greg Thielman, and Eric Dodds, have put a tremendous amount of time presenting responses to all of the questions that Buffalo Red Watershed District has posed regarding the permit application. There's been several meetings and hearings. Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Sherling have been present at many of those, as well as Mayor Judd, to answer questions from the Buffalo Red Watershed District. Pursuant to Minnesota law, they have so much time that they can act upon a permit when it is submitted in Minnesota. They request an extension of that time for 3 reasons. The first reason is they want to have a meeting with the DNR, I believe also the Army Corps of Engineers, and Buffalo Red regarding one of the permit conditions in the Minnesota DNR permit related to the maximum level of the pool and flowage easements. The Diversion Authority believes that would be a productive meeting. The second is that they would like to have a second meeting with our technical team regarding the draft permit conditions that Buffalo Red has proposed. They previously proposed draft permit conditions from Buffalo Red that our team had a few minor changes and tweaks to, nothing really substantive. They would like to have one additional meeting, and then they would like to have a meeting with their counsel regarding their participation in the contested case hearing process. I'm recommending, along with the technical team and administrative team, that the Diversion Authority grant their request. They're requesting an additional time through the end of June to accomplish those 3 items. I think it makes a lot of sense to grant it. I could certainly answer any additional questions you might have about it, but the letter would just simply be granting them an extension. If additional time were needed from them, they would have to make a second request to the Diversion Authority to extend the time period.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have one question. So if we allow this, will that impact any of the construction that we have scheduled for this year? That's my concern.
No, it would not.
There you go. Good answer.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you. Is there any limit to extensions, or can they keep on extending this?
They can continue to ask you for extensions. You as the applicant can eventually say no. So you do have control over the number of extensions as the authority.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley.
Roger?
John, does that, this action affect our legal rights at all?
You are granting an extension of the time for them to review the permit application. They would have to make a decision. However, my recommendation is that in my experience, when a board wants additional information, it's better to give them that additional time than to force them into making a decision before they feel like they have sufficient information. And so while you are entitled to a decision under the permit, I would not recommend pushing that decision before the entity that's granting the permit is ready to make that decision.
Madam Chair, did you have more questions?
Just one more quick question. If the shoe was on the other foot and we were asking them for an extension, do you think they'd give it to us? You don't have to answer that, but I think the answer would be no.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner.
I move to grant Buffalo Red River Watershed District's request for additional time to review permit application number 19-003 and authorize Co-Deputy Executive Director Michael Redler to send the attached letter.
You've
I'll
heard the
second it.
motion.
I'll
There's a
second it.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
No.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Jed?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Shockley. On to item number 6, public outreach. Mr. Olson.
Chairwoman. Thank you. We had a good outreach meeting yesterday, talked about several things in the outreach. One of the items is Project Talking Points, a document that would help us and help the public understand where the project is and help answer questions that they might have. Next item was lands outreach, which included an outreach to Christine. There was a group went and talked to Christine to talk about their issues. with a ring dike around their community and some of the requests that they might have. And also the Clomar was submitted, and that is in the process, which will help identify, I think, the impacts of this project. With the Winnipeg Area Flood Tour, which was, I understand, was fantastic, and it was presented very well and gave a lot of information about actually similarities between what we're wanting to build and what they have in place and for many years. So there was a lot of similarities, a lot of things that could be, information could be gleaned from that tour, and talking to the people that run it and the people that built it. So if there is opportunities to go again, if we can get a group together, Tammy Jo from AE2S can line up a bus trip, and I think I have not been there yet. It just didn't work this time, but certainly I think it's something that's well worth it. Core visit was mentioned. That's coming up as we initiate a new kernel. And then Tammy Jo will give us a brief update on the analytics of what's happening online.
Hi, I'm Tammy Jo. I do communications for the project. And just real quick, I just wanted to show some of the things that you as a diversion authority have. Make sure that you can see some of the tools that we have available. So one thing that we did this month is that we started putting out some of the project facts and just maybe some of the things that people don't realize about the project. So we'll be continuing doing this during the summer and highlighting some of the things about the project. This is really good for times like this when we don't have big news items. And I think it's important to know that, when there's not big news happening, we still need to be putting information out there about the project. And so if you have ideas about this, please let us know. The other thing that I wanted to show you was your website that we maintain for you. One thing that's really important about this particular site is that now when people go to the site, if they click on a particular article, it will show them additional articles that are important or maybe related. And so this is a reason why we redesigned the site so that you could get more in-depth answers if you're looking for something. And as we move towards construction and Ames getting back on board and moving dirt, I think it's really important to be thinking about how are we going to keep the public engaged and knowledgeable about the construction that's happening. And so we talked a little bit yesterday about some of the drone videos that we did previously, and that would be something that would be a really good way to get people's eyes on what's being built and what's going on. So we send out newsletters every month. Usually we do one a month. Last month we did 4 because there was a lot of big news happening. And so you have a lot of tools at your disposal. And if you have any questions about those, just feel free to let me know.
Tammy Jo, I got some questions from the people in the Horace area and the construction starting, which Terry talked about today, but I think some people had some question what's going forward, and Terry gave a great thing of how many different things are going forward, but I think after the injunction was let off, a lot of people have confusing rumors, and of course the rumor I was told that it'll still be held up, won't move forward, things are happening, so perhaps on your website you could kind of put the net effects of the injunction being lifted and what's going to happen. Because there's still those rumor mills, and the people in the Horace area are wondering what does this mean to me, and staging area and those types of things, which I think land management is managing, but perhaps we could put something in there to tell.
And we're working on an overall document that shows all construction related to the project, some of the in-town work that's happening, the core, to kind of keep it all in one place, because with so many different things happening, it's really hard for even a regular person to keep track of it all.
And there's transportation issues in Horace now, so they're doing some different construction. It has nothing to do with what we're doing, but people, of course, always want to say it's the diversion, but it's not.
Roger?
Mayor, and also, this is probably land, we heard this at land, but the road, the bypass south of Horace is going to be paved as soon as the weather permits. So that area that's now gravel that goes around our construction area will have pavement on it.
You could haul your tractor through there then?
Correct.
Within the next week or two is the
Yeah.
hope. So, anything else? Okay, thank you, Tammy. Anything else from you, Roger? No, okay. Mark, did you have anything for the Business Leaders Task
Yes, I
Force?
will. Mark Nesbitt, current chair of the board at the Chamber of Commerce, and we just came from Moorhead and our strategic planning session for our board of directors, and permanent flood protection continues to be at the top of our list under strategic goal number 1. And speaking about the continuity on this, when I finish my term at the end of August, Tom Dawson, who chairs this committee, will be the chair of the board as well. So our continued support is pretty well assured. So, and appreciate the opportunity and the hard work that this group continues to put forth. So it will be part of our effort as we move forward on exciting projects like fueling our future. It's critical that the infrastructure needs that. So thank you for your efforts.
And thank you, Mr. Nesbitt. We appreciate the Chamber's support as well. It's very important. Any questions from the group for either of those two gentlemen? Then I'll move on to item number 7, land management. We had a committee meeting yesterday, and I won't belabor everything that Kim already went over, but you do have item 7B in your packet. It's got the maps. I think these are really helpful, especially page 2. You can see how we've started at the north part of the channel and work our way down. A lot of activity going on. Our land agents are out speaking with folks every day and really moving things along. So we're happy that we're getting people out of limbo there. But you can go ahead and look at that at your leisure, and you can see the property status there as well. The other item is the ag impact study, the realignment of the storage area. Was somebody going to present on that? I see that we're asking for action or not. I know Eric was unable to be here today.
Right, and I think Eric just wanted to provide that for your information and to basically get a head nod from the board that it was okay to go ahead with that. But I don't think it's an official action.
Okay, so this is just an additional study with NDSU. Do you want to present this, or?
Nope, if you want to describe it, go right ahead.
Just to talk about land impacts for agriculture, and wanting to make sure that we have the updated information we need, and what delayed planting could mean. There's several different factors that they take in. It's quite complicated, actually. Just ask Roger here. Whether or not you plant corn or soybeans, and how soon you can get into your fields. So they're just looking for our blessing to move forward and get this updated, so that when we do go ahead and grant flow easements, that we will have the information available to do so.
Madam Chair, just to add,
Yes.
well, this ties to the continued study because of Plan B.
Yes.
To finalize that, any impacts. And then Finance yesterday, we chose not to make a motion because it's the authority of the co-executive directors. And so to stay consistent kind of with authority, we acknowledged it, and I don't think there's a motion needed here as well, just acknowledge it.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions regarding this or concerns?
Just a comment. Some of us met with the CW co-op at Comstock, and they were concerned with loss of revenue from this project because of the impact to possible prevented planting. If it was too wet. So they had several issues, so we included that in the NDSU study to have them look at that, and then also look at what happens if a farmer doesn't switch from corn to beans. He just decides that I'm going to plant corn, and that's it, and if I can't, I'm not going to plant anything. So NDSU will look at that, and then also look at the switching of crops, going from corn to wheat or corn to soybeans, and look at that impact. Also the impact then to the co-op. When you switch from corn to beans, there's less fertilizer, and then also there's less product to handle in the fall. So they look at it as an impact to their co-op. The co-op is over 90 years old, and they just are worried about the possible impact to that. So NDSU has we've added that to their task.
Yes,
Roger, aren't they on the impact amount, soybeans are down, you might change what you plant anyway? I mean, aren't the farmers going to, on market issues anyway, could increase the profitability of your elevator that has nothing to do with us? It really just has to do with the market where it's at?
Yeah, the market has a lot to do with it. And I made that statement yesterday in land management that, if the price of beans is $12 and the price of corn is $3, there's going to be a lot of switching to beans.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So that could have an impact on whether the farmer switches from corn to beans. So although the farmer would not be covered by multi-peril insurance, so he would most likely want to put a crop in because he would not collect multi-peril insurance for prevent plant if we flood the crop. So. But I hope NDSU can kind of find that middle ground where, on average, where does this fall? What are the impacts? And I think that's the hope of this study.
Okay, thank you very much. Then moving on to item number 8, finance.
I'll ask Kent Costin to come up and address his memo that stemmed from some questions yesterday on the finance committee discussion. And while he's doing that, not a lot of change has happened month to month here. We're still kind of in a very quiet period, I guess I'd describe it as. So you can see the expenditures to date, our cash position, and page 3 in the handout is a couple areas that Kent's going to elaborate on. A couple of questions were derived yesterday. So unless there's any other questions, I'll just defer to Kent for next phase here.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Grinberg. These questions surfaced yesterday. I was out of town, so we were able to answer those today and get that to you. But the first question was in regard to comparing a couple of reports. There's a fiscal agent report that our finance agent, we as the City of Fargo as a financial agent, we prepare that report. And then there's a cash budget report that the PMC compares. And the difference in the question was, why does one seem to show the program management costs so far over budget as opposed to the other one that doesn't? And the bottom line is that the fiscal agent report that we prepare includes the encumbered amount of funds for contracts that have been awarded. And in this particular case, there's been about $21.2 million worth of open contracts for land acquisition services. So that would make our fiscal accounting report higher than the PMC report. It's just a difference in formatting and in tracking that open obligation. And because it's a multi-year expenditure that will happen over the next several years, the land acquisition is not really comparable when you try to say, how does that compare to this year's budget? Because only a portion of that contract will be expended in this fiscal year. So that was the first issue. And then the other question, number 2, was there was a couple of differences between our fiscal agent report, the categorization of the program management costs, and then jumping back deeper into our favorite report, which is the liquidated report that shows every single expenditure and encumbrance for the project. Basically, there was a compilation of a couple of vendors on that vendor report that takes you to the total forward in the summary report. So we've looked at that, we've answered the question and showed the numbers as to how we get to those financial reports. So it's basically just a matter of interpreting the data and which report that information is contained. And if any of you ever have any questions with regard to that, I mean, feel free at any time to send an email to us at the city as a fiscal agent. We're happy to work your way through this. As we continue to compile more information, it obviously becomes more complex and there's just more data to analyze. So we're happy to work on that for you if you need help.
Thank you, Mr. Costin. Yes, Mayor.
Kent, there was a question asked today about, you know, the city of Fargo is audited. Is the diversion authorities, I know you and Mike both have some part of our different audits or income outcome. Is any of that audited at any time?
To answer your question, that would be audited independently, and it has not been audited yet. At this point, we've had some discussions preliminarily with our auditors to try to align procedures that we would use, but that has not been completed yet. It's still on our to-do list.
And Jacobs doesn't have a separate set of books for all that as well? Do they have a separate audit for their work?
We as fiscal agent process all of the cash disbursements for the project, and therefore it should be audited through your fiscal agent agreement and through the records that exist at the city. They do have an extensive library of contracts and agreements and any single document or any single action for the project is recorded in a system. It's called ACONEX. It's a computer program management system. So between us as fiscal agent, where all the money passes through, and their contract management system, there's very extensive coverage of actions and related documentation.
Thank you for that.
Move acceptance of the report.
Second.
Any further discussion on the finance report? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Before you is 8B, voucher request for $2.532 million, Cass County Joint Resources District, Dorsey, Whitney, Onstead, Twitchell, FEMA. Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the vouchers? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Contracted actions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'll speak to items 8C, both of these items. They're on your screen before you. The first is our PMC Task Order Number 2, Amendment 4. This is a 5-week amendment to Task Order 2 to extend services for the core program management services through the end of June. This is a $775,000 amendment, and then we'll be coming back to have follow-up discussions with the board and through the Finance Committee about the new task order that will replace this. And then item B is Work Package 50A. This is a property structure mitigation item for Schmidt & Sons. This is for $109,680. And I would just note from the PMC's cover memo, this is approximately 60% lower than the engineer's estimate for the work. And so the PMC's project manager has reviewed this, and we recommend approval on this one as well. This is for structure mitigation in a variety of areas around the footprint of the project. So the Finance Committee also took these items up yesterday, recommends approval unanimously on both items A and B. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions on the contracting items or comments?
Move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded for both items, both contracting items. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Madam Chair, just there's a comment. Next month, we anticipate the Finance Committee bringing forward recommendations on Task Order 5 and 6. And parlay that with the comments made earlier that the 60, 90-day plan B finance plan over the next few months. So, you know, obviously policy decisions are going to be made in the future. Commissioner Steen and I, as Vice Chair, have been talking about how to make recommendations and bring to the Finance Committee and working with our partners to bring forward that in a fashion that makes sense for the next phase of this project moving forward. So I just share that as June will be a little more extensive in the getting your heads around some large task orders.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Grunberg? Any other business? Could I get a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, and we are adjourned. Thank you all.